Wealth promises freedom, but sometimes it delivers something far darker. Behind every headline lies a web of secrets and choices that turn prosperity into peril. In this video, we explore 5 disturbing deaths that reveal how greed, betrayal, and sudden fortune can lead to tragedy. These are haunting reminders that, for some, money can cost the ultimate price, their life. In 2018, a quiet town in central China became the backdrop for a heartbreaking sequence of events that would shake a nation. A seemingly devoted husband and father made a desperate decision to escape crushing debt, but his silence about that plan would ultimately cost him everything. Within weeks, what began as an attempt to secure a better future ended in irreversible tragedy. He Yong, 34, lived in Laodi City, Hunan Province, with his wife Dai Lanlin and their 2 young children, a 4-year-old son and a 3-year-old daughter. Dai was a homemaker, caring for the children full-time, while he worked and shouldered the financial burdens of the family. Among those burdens was their daughter's epilepsy treatment, a constant and costly necessity. Under increasing pressure, he borrowed from online lenders and quickly amassed over 100,000 yuan in debt, an overwhelming sum, amounting to about $14,400. Unable to see a way out, he took out a 1 million yuan life insurance policy in early September 2018, naming Dai as the sole beneficiary. On September 19th, he rented a vehicle from his employer and drove it into a river to fake a fatal crash. His intention was to stage his own death and allow his family to claim the insurance payout. He then fled to Guizhou province, vanishing without a word to anyone. Crucially, Dai had no idea it was a plan. She believed he had truly died. Police recovered the submerged car but not the body, and informed the family he was presumed dead. Dai was devastated. In the following days, she not only grieved for her husband but also faced suspicion and blame from his relatives. She was accused of causing his death, criticized for being unemployed, and rumored to be mentally unstable. As the pressure mounted, she wrote a farewell message on WeChat on October 10th, expressing her continued love for her husband and deep sorrow. She explained she didn't want to leave their children behind to suffer, fearing they would face the same bullying and loneliness she had endured. That day, surveillance footage showed her walking hand in hand with her 2 children toward a nearby pond. All 3 were later found drowned. The next day, police discovered their bodies. Upon learning of their deaths, he surrendered to authorities on October 12th. In a video posted online shortly before his arrest, he wept uncontrollably, saying he had never imagined his wife would make such a choice. He explained that his plan was to fake his death temporarily and later return to take his family into hiding. But by the time he spoke those words, it was far too late. He was detained on charges of insurance fraud and property destruction. But experts noted that since never filed a claim, the fraud was incomplete and unlikely to lead to full prosecution. They also stressed that there was no legal basis to hold him criminally responsible for the deaths of Dai and the children. Moral condemnation, however, had been swift and widespread. Public sentiment across social media had been largely unforgiving, with many accusing him of selfishness and irresponsibility. The case triggered nationwide debate, not just about financial desperation, but also about the silent suffering of rural women. Dai's final messages spoke volumes about the weight of stigma and blame placed on women without income or social power. Editorials in major Chinese outlets framed her death not as a romantic sacrifice, but as a cry against social isolation and systemic inequality. Her story resonated especially in rural communities, where the number of women taking their own lives remains unusually high due to a combination of economic hardship, lack of mental health support, and rigid gender roles. Dai's family pointed to his relatives as having exacerbated the situation. They retained the right to pursue legal action. This was not just a case of fraud gone wrong. It was a collapse of communication, trust, and emotional endurance, one that ended in unimaginable loss. In a case that shocked California and gripped the nation with its chilling cruelty, 2 elderly women, Helen Golay and Olga Rutterschmidt, hid unimaginable deceit behind the guise of generosity. Presenting themselves as kind-hearted benefactors to the homeless, they posed as supportive allies to society's most vulnerable. But beneath the surface was a scheme so cold and calculating, it would ultimately cost 2 men their lives and expose the deadly potential of unchecked greed. Helen, born in Texas in 1931, and Olga, born in Hungary in 1933, met in Los Angeles in the 1990s. Both women were in their 70s when authorities uncovered their plan. To those around them, they appeared to be ordinary older women. They volunteered at the Hollywood Presbyterian Church, an outreach center serving the local homeless community, and were seen as friendly, well-dressed participants in a compassionate cause. In truth, their presence there had a sinister purpose. It was a hunting ground. Between 1997 and 2005, the 2 women approached homeless men with offers of shelter, food, and assistance, especially targeting those with no close family ties. They convinced their victims to sign documents under various pretenses, including offers of help with benefits. What the men did not know was that Helen and Olga were fraudulently taking out multiple life insurance policies on them, often posing as relatives, fiancés, or business partners, and listing themselves as beneficiaries. Over the years, they forged signatures and lied repeatedly to insurance providers, collecting personal data under the guise of assistance. Paul Vados, a 73-year-old homeless man, was the first known victim. In November 1999, he was found dead in a Hollywood alley, apparently struck by a vehicle in a hit-and-run. At the time, no witnesses were found, and Helen and Olga stepped forward, identifying themselves as close relatives and requesting that he be cremated. The case appeared tragic but unremarkable, until 6 years later, when another man died under nearly identical circumstances. Kenneth McDavid, a 50-year-old aspiring screenwriter who had fallen into homelessness, was taken off the streets by Helen. She paid for his apartment, meals, and other necessities. On June 22, 2005, Kenneth was found dead in a dark Los Angeles alley. His body bore signs of severe trauma, with his chest and skull crushed and his clothing stained with grease, suggesting he had been lying beneath a car when struck. There were no witnesses, but toxicology reports revealed high levels of prescription drugs in his system. Suspicion began to grow after insurance investigator Ed Webster received a claim filed by Helen and Olga, who identified themselves as Kenneth's business partners, when their accounts did not match what they had told police, claiming to be his fiancée and cousin. Webster began digging. He contacted Los Angeles police, and by chance, Detective Nelson Hernandez spoke with another officer who recalled a similar 1999 case involving Paul Vados. The beneficiaries in both cases were Helen and Olga. As authorities investigated, they discovered the women had taken out more than 20 insurance policies between the two victims, totaling over $5 million. They uncovered surveillance footage showing suspicious vehicle activity near Kenneth's death site and found Kenneth's blood under the chassis of a Mercury Sable linked to Helen. A post-it note with the car's license plate was later found in her home. Investigators also found large quantities of sedatives in the women's homes, fake IDs, forged documents, and personal information on other potential victims. One man, Jimmy Covington, testified in court that Helen and Olga had approached him with offers of help, but asked him to provide his social security number and other personal data. He grew suspicious and left. In May 2006, with enough evidence for fraud charges, authorities arrested the women. In jail, they were recorded arguing. Olga, scolding Helen, said that taking out too many policies was stupidity and warned that they were going to prison. In March 2008, both women were charged with multiple counts, including first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Helen was found guilty of the deaths of both Paul and Kenneth, while Olga was convicted in Paul's case and found guilty of conspiracy in both. They were sentenced to consecutive life terms without parole. Their appeals were denied. What began as a sinister plan to profit from lives they deemed disposable became a disturbing reminder of how appearances can hide true malice. Helen and Olga, once seen as gentle benefactors, had treated human lives as financial investments and paid with their own freedom. In 2020, Laura Cowell, a 57-year-old retired hospital executive from Galena, Illinois, vanished without explanation, only to be found days later, lifeless in the Mississippi River, more than 200 miles from home. Behind her death lay a devastating story of deception, manipulation, and profound emotional turmoil. Laura had built a quiet, fulfilling life in Galena after the death of her husband of 24 years. A lover of gardening, golf, and her volunteer work with a therapy dog named Effie, Laura was well known and deeply respected in her community. Yet after years of marriage, the absence of romantic companionship left a void. In 2018, hoping to rebuild this part of her life, Laura joined Match.com. That decision marked the beginning of a harrowing descent. There she met a man named Frank Borg, who claimed to be a Swedish investment advisor. He mirrored her background, widowed, a parent with Midwest ties, and quickly won her trust. Within days of exchanging emails, they professed love. Though they never met in person, their correspondence intensified rapidly. Frank manipulated Laura, urging her to send him money. Over time, he convinced her to transfer a staggering $1.5 million to accounts tied to a fake business called Goose Investments. In the background, their communication changed. The affectionate emails shifted toward demands and instructions. Frank directed Laura to create fake dating profiles, open new bank accounts, and take out a mortgage on her home. Federal investigators later traced his emails to Ghana. His photo, Laura's daughter would discover, was stolen from a Chilean doctor's social media account. On August 7, 2020, Laura's daughter, Kelly Go, received a call from a federal agent warning her that her mother may have been caught in an elaborate scam. Alarmed, Kelly drove from Chicago to Galena only to find the house empty. Buried in a filing cabinet was a handwritten letter addressed to her. In it, Laura confessed that she had been living a double life, admitted that she was broken, and ominously added that she knew she would end up dead. 2 days later, Laura's body was recovered in the Mississippi River near Canton, Missouri. Her car was found parked at a boat ramp 50 miles away. The autopsy confirmed drowning but offered no clarity on how she ended up in the water. Police found no signs of foul play and initially categorized the case as a probable voluntary act, though no official ruling was made. For Kelly, that conclusion left too many questions. Her mother had canceled lunch plans just 10 minutes before leaving, seen on the phone in her driveway with someone. A burner phone package was later discovered in her home, but the phone itself was missing. Her last message to a friend had said, "All is good." None of it aligned with someone planning to vanish quietly. As Kelly investigated further, she found hundreds of emails showing how Frank had systematically gained Laura's mother's trust and then used it against her. Over time, Laura seemed to realize what was happening. In one message, she expressed doubts, writing that he and those strangers were clearly finding out more about her than she knew about them. Kelly believes Laura felt endangered, that she had been threatened, and that she saw no way out of the spiral she had been pulled into. In the months that followed, Kelly gave up her job to focus entirely on raising awareness about romance scams. She spoke to victims, financial institutions, and law enforcement, advocating for stronger protections and more aggressive action against fraudsters. She felt that she would not be doing Laura justice if she did not share the case and Laura's story to help other victims. Though investigators were never able to determine the true identity of Frank, Laura's death became a painful symbol of how powerful and destructive online deception can be. On the morning of June 2, 2018, Daniel Brophy, a well-respected chef and beloved instructor at the Oregon Culinary Institute in Portland, was found dead in the kitchen where he had worked for years. The 63-year-old had been shot twice while preparing for class, and the discovery by his own students triggered a homicide investigation that would unravel an unsettling and deeply tragic story. At the center of this case was someone few suspected at first: his own wife, Nancy Crampton Brophy. Daniel Brophy was known not only for his culinary expertise, but also for his kindness and dedication to teaching. He lived with his wife, Nancy, in a quiet Portland neighborhood where he raised chickens, maintained a vegetable garden, and often cooked elaborate meals at home. The couple had been married for nearly 3 decades. Nancy, a self-published author of romantic suspense novels, had long painted their marriage as a deep and loving partnership. She frequently described Daniel as a generous, stable presence in her life, her Mr. Right. But in the background, financial strain was mounting. Their retirement account had been depleted, and debts were piling up. Nancy and Daniel were both trying to bring in extra income, including selling Medicare insurance and preparing their home for sale. Despite these challenges, no one suspected that Daniel's life might be in danger, until it was too late. On the day of the crime, Daniel was at the institute before students arrived, setting up ice and water buckets in the kitchen. He was shot twice, once in the back and once in the chest. There were no signs of forced entry or robbery. His wallet remained untouched, and nothing was stolen. The crime was brutal and deliberate, and there was little physical evidence pointing to a suspect. However, a trail of digital and circumstantial clues slowly began to emerge. Initially, Nancy told investigators that she had been at home that morning, walking the dogs and taking a shower. But her story changed after traffic camera footage surfaced, showing her van in the vicinity of the culinary school during the 13-minute window in which Daniel was shot. She then claimed she must have gone for a coffee run she couldn't recall due to the emotional trauma of the day. Surveillance footage and location data from her phone placed her car near the scene before and after the shooting. Investigators discovered that Nancy had purchased a Glock 17 pistol at a gun show, along with a ghost gun kit in separate parts, including a slide and barrel, online. While the gun itself did not match the ballistics of the weapon used in the crime, the additional parts she bought were never recovered. Prosecutors alleged she had swapped out the components to commit the crime and then reassembled the original pieces to avoid detection. When questioned, Nancy admitted to purchasing the parts and handling the gun, but claimed it was research for a novel she was writing. Digital forensic analysis played a critical role in the case. Investigators recovered internet search history from Nancy's laptop, showing she had researched ghost guns, gun assembly, and cleaning a Glock 17. The searches began months before Daniel's death and included inquiries into how much recoil a Glock had and how to buy a gun locally. Detectives found no evidence that Daniel ever used the gun she claimed to have given him for mushroom hunting. Further complicating matters, Nancy was the sole beneficiary on several life insurance policies, totaling $1.4 million. 3 days after the murder, she contacted the lead detective and requested a letter stating she was not a suspect, so she could claim the insurance benefits. Investigators also found that she had spent over $1,000 monthly on policy premiums, despite the couple's financial difficulties. While the court did not permit the jury to consider her 2011 essay titled "How to Murder Your Husband" as evidence, The themes of the essay, discussing motives such as financial gain and avoiding jail, closely mirrored the prosecution's case. Nancy's novels, often centered on betrayal and dark secrets, now seemed ominously reflective of real events. After a lengthy trial, Nancy Crampton Brophy was convicted of second-degree murder on May 25, 2022. She was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years. The judge and jury found the weight of the circumstantial and digital evidence too compelling to ignore. The case shocked the Portland community and the broader public. Daniel Brophy, a man devoted to teaching and his quiet life, had died not at the hands of a stranger, but of someone he trusted most. Jeffrey Dampier once represented the dream so many imagine, an average man transformed overnight by unimaginable wealth. But what should have brought peace and prosperity became a path lined with deception, manipulation, and a fatal betrayal. Born and raised on Chicago's West Side, Jeffrey's life took a dramatic turn after his 1996 win of a $20 million Illinois lottery prize, an event that would ultimately cost him everything. Before his windfall, Jeffrey worked as a security guard, leading a modest, grounded life. The lottery win, while life-changing, also marked the beginning of unexpected complications. Shortly after claiming the prize, he and his wife divorced, splitting the money evenly. In the years that followed, Jeffrey moved to Florida and married Crystal Jackson. Seeking a fresh start, the couple opened Cassie's Gourmet Popcorn in Tampa Bay, where they hoped to build something lasting from the fortune. Jeffrey was widely seen as generous. He helped Crystal's family financially and emotionally, even moving her sisters, Victoria and Terry Jackson, down to Florida. He supported them as they got back on their feet, buying gifts, paying bills, and offering stability. But beneath the surface of his kindness, a secret grew that would prove deadly. Jeffrey was engaged in an affair with his sister-in-law, Victoria Jackson. By 2005, Victoria was also romantically involved with a man named Nathaniel Jackson. Nathaniel became aware of Jeffrey's wealth and of the affair. With both information and motive, he began orchestrating a plan, allegedly with Victoria's help, to extract money from Jeffrey, through intimidation if necessary. On July 26, 2005, Victoria contacted Jeffrey, claiming her car had broken down, asking him to come to Nathaniel's apartment. When Jeffrey arrived, he was amped. Nathaniel held him at gunpoint, forcing him into a van. His hands were bound with shoelaces as he was beaten with the butt of a shotgun. The demand was clear: hand over the money. As they drove, the situation escalated. Jeffrey refused to comply. According to reports, Nathaniel and Victoria switched places in the van so she could try to convince Jeffrey herself. Eventually, Nathaniel handed her the shotgun. He allegedly told her to carry out the act. With the gun in her hands and the situation spiraling beyond control, Victoria pulled the trigger, firing a single round into the back of Jeffrey's head. He died instantly. The two left Jeffrey's body in the van and abandoned it along a quiet road. It wasn't long before authorities discovered the scene. Investigators quickly traced the events back to Victoria and Nathaniel, who were arrested just days later. Both were charged and convicted in court. In 2006, Victoria was found guilty of first-degree homicide, armed kidnapping, and armed carjacking. She received 3 consecutive life sentences. Nathaniel Jackson faced similar charges and the same fate. During the trial, Victoria's defense attempted to shift the narrative, portraying her as a victim herself. Testimonies from her sister suggested the relationship between her and Jeffrey began when she was still a teenager. It was argued that Nathaniel had forced her, cornering her into the fatal act. Still, the court found her fully responsible, citing her role in luring Jeffrey to the scene. In the aftermath, Jeffrey's family struggled to reconcile his tragic end with the generous man they had known. His father later stated that he believed justice had been served. Meanwhile, his widow, Crystal, expressed a somber reflection on the role wealth had played in her husband's demise, saying that she believed it was a curse. What started as a dream come true turned into a nightmare of manipulation, violence, and loss. For Jeffrey Dampier, a man who tried to use his fortune to uplift those around him, the very generosity he displayed became a gateway to betrayal and a tragic end.